Well, it's an expansionary one. We have an increase of about 5.3 trillion compared to what was submitted initially, 49.7. Not much is out there in terms of the breakdown, but going by what the president, had in the letter he sent to the National Assembly, part of the money will be used to recapitalize the Bank of Industry, the Bank of Agriculture, and also channel some to the solid mineral sector and infrastructure. I think that's the way to go, to put money on infrastructure. And if you also look at the major highlights, okay, if you compare that with what we have in the original submission, you would also notice that the capital component jumped from by as much as 10 trillion naira. Okay, the capital component in the original submission, which you also find in the Budget Office website, was just about 14.8 trillion. So now we have 24 trillion, as capital component. Okay, so that's close to 10 trillion. You also notice that the other items were reduced. Talking about even the debt service was reduced from 16 trillion to 14 trillion. Statutory transfer also got reduced from 14 to about 13. You also have even the recurrent non-debt, also reduced. So I think what we have now on paper, okay, appears better than the original submission because more emphasis is on the capital. But again, it's important, I said on paper, it's important to emphasize that the implementation of this capital component is what is critical, because at the end of the day, it is what will, translate to development, and also what will impact the common man.
Okay, talk to us about the impact.
Yes, the impact will be felt, as I said, from the capital side. Okay, I started by saying it's expansionary in the sense that we have even a deficit of over 13 trillion. Now, if we are not careful with the way we spend this money, it's going to impact inflation. Okay, inflation today, is elevated at over 34%. Even with the rebasing that we're expecting to have, inflation will still be, relatively, high. So if we're not careful with the way we spend, if we're not careful with the way we borrow, okay, we are also likely to see higher inflation rates. We're also likely to see pressure on the exchange rate. So that's why it's important that the application of this, this money, should be geared towards the capital component. And even when we talk about the capital component, it's not every item you find there that should enjoy priority. It's important we prioritize this capital component to ensure that the ones we focus on, are the redevelopmental ones. Okay, where items like purchase of cars, for example, which also come under capital component, shouldn't be given priority. So when we have scarce funds, okay, and we are prioritizing, it is developmental parts that we should prioritize. Well, the interesting thing again is that the assumptions, the benchmarks, were not altered. We are still using a $75 per barrel. We are still using the 1,500 naira, exchange rate.
That is the part of the 2024 budget that is still running?
No, the 2025 benchmarks, they're still there. So what I'm saying is these benchmarks are still there. Okay, but of course we know in terms of the oil revenues, okay, that is still subject to the vagaries of the international oil markets. We still don't know what is likely to happen with Trump now, Trump, especially against the backdrop of Trump's policies. But the fact that the budget is leaning more on non-oil revenue, again, is a plus.
Okay, are we going to see inflation going up or going down? Because I remember in a conversation some time back, experts like you were saying the inflation rate might drop to 15%. Is there any possibility?
Yes, there is every likelihood that inflation rate will moderate. Whether it will get down to 15% is difficult to say, but it's likely going to moderate. By the way, I'm sure in any moment, we are likely to see a new inflation figure based on the rebased inflation. And again, that reminds me, this proposal now, okay, you'll find that the deficit to GDP is just 1.5%, okay, as opposed to close to 4% we saw in the original figure. So what that means is that it's possible they have even taken into cognizance the rebasing that we're expecting any moment now. So whether inflation will come down again, will depend on how we spend. But there's a very likelihood that inflation will moderate. It's important we put money on agriculture, okay, put money on infrastructure. It is by so doing that you can really drop inflation.
Indeed, Professor Uche Uwaleke, the Professor of Capital Markets, Nasarawa State University. Thank you so much, as always, for your insight into monetary, budgetary matters.
My pleasure.
It's a pleasure having you all the time.